Evening, everybody. I've already seen a few folks in the chat mentioning, is this an April Fool's joke? No, I promise you it is not an April Fool's joke. We are here to talk tropics. And again, if you don't have me on Instagram, I had mentioned when promoting this evening discussion, I consider this the final countdown to the hurricane season. We've talked about it before, and it's very crazy to even see 4/1/2025 on my computer desktop. Okay, are we back? Can I get confirmation that we're back? Are we back? I swear, this weather that we're having right now is just doing a number on us. Don't tell me we're lagging again. Appreciate that. For some strange reason, there might be a little bit of a lag, too. Gosh, this is brutal. Man, come on. Can you guys still hear me okay? YouTube is on the fritz right now. It's saying that our bit rate and our lag is doing real bad. Real bad. So we're struggling right now. We're going to hold it together. We're going to hold it together. Still holding it. I'm going to stay in the stream. I'm going to stay in the stream. I don't know what is going on with YouTube right now. Yeah, it must be... Yeah, the computer is trying to throw an April Fool's joke at us. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. We've got a lot of viewers tuning in right now, too. I really do not need to lag out. I really do not want to lag out. And I apologize for anybody out there who may be trying to tune in. But again, we're getting nailed by thunderstorms here in Polk County. We've got one sitting pretty much right overhead. Oh, and now they put out a special weather statement for it as well. Finally, better late than never. All right, are we doing okay? It looks like we're back. I'm not seeing any errors on my side anymore. Good evening, everybody. The chat is popping off. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead. Oh, nope, there goes another error. We got another error. Good Lord. All right, we're going to try to slowly stumble through this. Hopefully this is not a sign of what's to come for the hurricane season, to where we're getting hiccup after hiccup, and there it goes again. We're lagging. We're lagging. What is happening right now? This is getting so frustrating. I think it could actually be my OBS Studios that's dorking up. I might have to close that out and reopen it. This is a bummer. This is a huge bummer. Are you guys still reading me? This is ridiculous. I'm so sorry about this. It is out of my hands. Gonna just stand by. Just going to stand by. My eyes are starting to burn. I gotta sip more coffee. Yes, I have coffee. You guys have seen me drink coffee this late at night. We'll go ahead and stand by and see what happens. I do think it is going to be an active hurricane season. And in fact, looking at the latest data that we do have, it does seem like we're slowly but surely starting to get a bit more of an active look. Maybe not a super active, let alone a hyperactive, but we are starting to get an active look. So with that being said, let's go ahead and try to punch through this. We're going to get off the satellite image and we'll get into the data. So we have that digging trough out west helping to reinforce the negative PNA that's in place over the United States. Dominant ridge anticyclone really building in over eastern CONUS, and that's primarily responsible for all the heat that we've been getting. Earlier today at the gym, I noticed on my dashboard we were sitting at 91 degrees. We have officially hit 90 degrees here in Central Florida for the first time in 2025. With that being said, though, we got some thunderstorms kicking off, severe weather out there over the Great Plains. It's going to be transitioning to the Ohio-Mississippi Valley over the next 24 hours. Lower Midwest, lower Great Lakes are also going to see some significant weather action, and we have another round of sea breeze flare-up ongoing here in Central Florida. The rest of our area of responsibility is still quiet. We still have lots of wind shear down there. The tropics are turned off. You can see it in this little bit of transverse banding right over the MDR, as a matter of fact, indicative of the fact that we are not going to get anything crazy down there. And it's pretty cool to see. You can actually see the trade winds kicking off towards the east there, and then our upper level winds strong coming in out of the west, moving east, and that's primarily why it is we don't have any tropical activity right now, because we have all that wind shear down there, and it is still very, very dry. We're almost there, though. Like I said, before the stream decided to lag out, we are in the final countdown now, folks. We have 45 days till the Eastern Pacific hurricane season begins, and then 2 weeks after that, you guys know the drill. That is when the Atlantic Basin gets going. So now let's go ahead and transition to some of our model data. I'm going to start with the CFS first because I know it updates on a daily basis, but I've noticed that we get a whole new slew of data on the month-to-month panels on the first of the month. So we'll start there. And first and foremost, what I want to highlight on here is going to be our monthly SST anomalies. And this is very interesting because if you look through the month of July, like I said, we get a little bit of extra stuff added on to the back end of our climate forecast system. There's a couple of interesting things of note here. First and foremost, the CFS is expecting a really dominant Atlantic Nina to form up. If you notice, we warmed the MDR of the actual Atlantic up again. We go back to our above average conditions right off the Horn of Africa and the Cabo Verde Islands there, but then we have a rockin' southern hemisphere La Nina, you could say, just to the bottom, just to the south of where our ITCZ, that convergence zone, would develop. And then another thing I'm noticing as well is we have cooler anomalies through the western extent of the subtropical Atlantic. So this kind of gives us a bit of a 2023 look to an extent, with a warm Canary Current right up against Spain, Portugal, the northwest quadrant of the African Peninsula. And then we still have a warm Gulf anomaly there. And for some strange reason, I don't know if I trust this, but this shows a cooler than average Caribbean. I don't know. I feel like this might be out to lunch a little bit. I'm not going to trust that, put too much faith into it. If we switch over to our precipitation anomaly, however, you'll notice that even in the month of May, we start to see the above average anomalies creeping back in for much of the basin into the Caribbean. So family and friends out there in Puerto Rico, the Lesser and Greater Antilles, you could definitely see an uptick in your thunderstorm action, your overall tropical rainfall, as this starts to get closer and closer to the start of the hurricane season. And then if we switch forward to June, June has a fairly active configuration according to our precip anomalies. Now, granted, a lot of it I feel like is still hugging where our warmest temperatures on the ocean surface are for the subtropical Atlantic, just to the north of the tropics there, southeast of where Bermuda is. But regardless, this does indicate we could have the possibility of an early gyre setup as we get into June, and then July, much of the same. In fact, July looks pretty favorable in terms of getting a lot of rainfall out there. If you look, we have what looks to be a mixed bag of things. We could still see some stuff close to the Yucatan Peninsula, Central America, Cuba, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands. Bahamas looking to receive a lot of rainfall potentially, according to the latest CFS run. This was initialized first thing this morning as of 0Z once we rolled forward into April, and you can see a lot of those anomalies still hugging the Gulf, especially along the west coast of Florida. I would not be surprised if we got an early system somewhere in through here. I'll show you the actual mid-range CFS at the end of this discussion, where there's something very interesting that I've been watching day by day. And then finally, if you look at the pressure anomaly for April, May, and then into June, it actually shows a fairly robust subtropical high, Bermuda Azores high out there through to July. And it shows lower pressure anomalies down there over the southeast United States, the Gulf of however you want to call it, the Caribbean, and then off our east coast in the southwest or the western extent of the Atlantic Ocean. So very interesting there. And now finally, we'll get into what I know everybody has been wondering, whether or not our ENSO is going to continue to evolve in very strange fashion like it has been. The CanSIPS looks very interesting, to tell you the truth, and that's why I'm holding off on... I heard that thunder outside. So I'm holding off on showing you just yet because I want to get through the CFS first. If you look from June into July, we continue to see the warmth building off of South America. We see a bit of an Atlantic Nina setup, and then the central ENSO regions out there for the 3.4 and the 4. We still continue to hold that neutral territory, which, you know, could be a good thing. It could be a good thing, kind of gives us a level playing field for the Atlantic and kind of a bit of what to expect as we go towards the hurricane season. Now we'll get into the CanSIPS, and you can't see it too well on here, I'll be honest. So I have Tropical Tidbits pulled up a couple of panels or a couple of tabs over here, but this is now the Canadian climate model, the CanSIPS, showing our ENSO and our Atlantic regions, as well as the Indian Ocean as a whole. And if you go forward in time to May, it does look like our La Nina tries to resurface a little bit. And then by July, August, and September, interesting enough, it actually switches us to a bit of a Modoki El Nino, to where we have the central equatorial Pacific warmer than average, but we have our coldest anomalies still connecting to the colder temperatures off the west coast of the United States and off the southern coastline of Mexico. This would actually indicate the potential for us to get a bit more activity in the Atlantic, because we're going to have focusing of our lift in the central Pacific, which if you consolidate it just a little bit more to only the 3.4 and the 4 regions, you're going to get that sinking motion closer to Central America, South America. It won't really have as much of an influence in the Atlantic, especially if we have those kicking anomalies out there in the central Atlantic. Because that's another thing, too. If you look right here, and I'll zoom us on in here in a second, look at those warm anomalies in the subtropics out there. Those are unprecedented. Those are pushing 3.5 degrees Charlie warmer than average, which is almost 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than average. That could definitely have implications on the hurricane season. Still seeing a rockin' Atlantic La Nina or Nina out there with warmer waters off the African coast. Just below the equator line there, we have our cooler anomalies, so that'll also help to focus the lift in that general area. So definitely a bizarre setup. Definitely a bizarre setup. And now, spoiler alert, I already accidentally fast-forwarded, but this is the CanSIPS for the month of July. And I don't know, everyone. This definitely is an active signature. Now, granted, we do have this large curvature in our precip anomalies that could indicate we will have windows of opportunity for those long track systems or those tropical waves that come off of Africa to find a weakness between ridging over the eastern United States and ridging over the central and eastern Atlantic and kick back up and out to sea just like 2023. But at the same time, look at the MDR, look at the Caribbean, look at the Gulf. There are still pretty active pieces of our precipitation anomalies that are still ongoing. So I don't know. I definitely don't know. Sorry, forgive me. I had to respond to a text message real quick. Not necessarily Brady G. It could mean another tropical cyclone if the season, or not the season, but if the steering patterns are present. Yes, carbon fiber, I do agree. It does look like the Caribbean is going to be a hotspot. This is July. This is August. August looks fairly active out there, truthfully. August looks just, and that's another reason why I'm a little confused as to some folks pumping the brakes on this hurricane season. Because if you look, we have very good precip anomalies that extend into the subtropics up into the mid-latitudes, but then we have most of our precip anomalies very, very close to home. Very close to home. In the Caribbean, near Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, down in the southern Caribbean where we had a lot of our features taking shape last hurricane season, the Bay of Campeche is smothered in possibly 8 to 12 inches above what the normal precip values that they typically accumulate down there could be. So I don't know. That is a fairly active look in my opinion. Here's September. September we start to back off a little bit, although the Caribbean still looks fairly active. And then October we're starting to see the signs that we're closing up shop. Then by November we're pretty much cooked. And then December, it's Christmas time. That's it. Now here is the CanSIPS courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. And if you look over the ENSO, see what happens there as we get into peak hurricane season. Very strange, very bizarre. It's actually showing that Modoki El Nino. where you have the cooler anomalies closest to South America and Central America, but the main ENSO regions are actually warmer than average. Still have our negative Indian Ocean dipole ongoing, with the western extent of the Indian Ocean being cooler than average, warmth focused over the maritime continents, which again provides us with a bit more of that oomph that we need for the hurricane season out there across the Atlantic. And you can see warm as far as the eye can see, plastered in the central Atlantic, which I do believe is going to have implications on the hurricane season, on our semi-permanent pressure systems. And I'll show you right now, one thing that's very interesting to me is if I pull up our lovely old climate reanalyzer. Let's see here. Let's hope that we're not going to lag out again. Mick and Marley, thanks so much for coming in. I do see, looks like YouTube's about to kick us out again. I really hope not. 1989, I believe, was a Modoki. It's Modoki, not Mokosi, but you're on the right track. But anyways, what I'm going to pull up here, believe it or not, let me go to the international dateline, and we're going to transition to a very fateful year. We're going to go to anomaly. Check this out. So if the CanSIPS were to verify, that would make 2004 one of our most optimal analogs. I messaged my good friend Jonathan Kagas that earlier today. At least I think I did. I remember I wanted to tell him that. But if you notice, our warmth is focused in the subtropics closest to the Canary Current. We have our Atlantic Niña ripping there off the southwest quadrant of Africa. We have the cooler anomalies, just like the CFS had shown us, over the western Atlantic. We still have our negative Indian Ocean dipole. Still the same configuration up there out across where the PDO would be. And then we have warmth in the Central Pacific and coldest anomalies off the coast of South America. And if you come back to the CanSIPS, that's not the right one. There you have it. So this just got fairly interesting. The CanSIPS thinks we could have a very similar configuration to that of 2004, which, if I can be brutally honest, as we go through the next month or two, as we get closer to hurricane season, it looks like the transition could happen anywhere between June to August. We'll start to switch out if this verifies. If it verifies, folks. This is another thing, too. If this verifies, because the climate models, they do tend to struggle, but we are slowly coming out of that phase to where they do struggle the most. And we're getting closer in time, which means they can only slowly but steadily get better. And I'm very curious to see how this shakes out. I really, really am, because that is definitely different from last month. If I switch to just March, notice immediately we have a bit more of a neutral phase out there across the equatorial Pacific. A little bit of the warmth, but we still have the cool anomalies spreading into the Central Pacific. If I switch us to the April run, you can definitely see where that starts to transition later on into the season. And then we go full El Nino, it looks like, or at least it tries to go. The next tornado season could be very interesting. So yeah, I'm going to watch this like a hawk. I'm very, very, very curious now to see what the Euro has to say for us in 5 or 6 days. Passive, what do you mean by that? Well, the models change because we have very above average temps today in a few days. In reference to what do you mean? The tropics, or here, wherever it is we reside in our neighborhood? You got to give me just a little more context. Now, moving on to our upper level winds. Again, this is a fairly favorable look, I think. If you notice, we have a lot less wind shear across the tropics and the subtropics where it matters the most. We don't really have very much upper level wind shear. This would show you where our jets would be running. And I don't really see very much wind shear from the start of the hurricane season. And in fact, it only becomes just a bit more favorable as we go through the peak of the hurricane season, August, September, and October. We still leave a lot of our jet activity out there. And this would kind of suggest we might have a positive NAO once again as we get closer to September, October timeframe, which is what happened during Helene and Milton If you notice, we have stronger jet activity off the southern coast of Greenland, off of Quebec, moving up towards Iceland, and then we have weaker jet activity down across the central and northern Atlantic, which would suggest that our subtropical ridge will be dominating out there for much of the North Atlantic. So we'll have to wait and see. Same thing with our lower anomalies. Where are they? Here we go. If you look at our actual 850 millibar winds, it shows the trade winds rocking down there through the subtropics and the tropics, all through this general area, which again would suggest that we have a stronger Atlantic high pressure spinning around out there in the clockwise fashion that we typically see. That could also push our systems a bit further towards the west. So it's a very big mixed bag right now, to tell you the truth. It's a very big mixed bag because there are indications, and that's why this hurricane season I am not trusting our precip anomalies. I am not going to trust them as far as I can throw them. And in this case, I can't throw them anywhere because they're freaking computer models. So trust them as far as I can throw them. And in this case, I can't throw them anywhere because they're freaking computer models. So this here, with really good trades over the lower subtropics, the upper tropical Atlantic, coupled with this, doesn't make very much sense. I really do think that the models here are pinging on where our warmth is, and they're showing more of that evaporative process just overall across the Atlantic, not necessarily tropical cyclone paths. Because then this would suggest that we're going to have another 2023, and that wouldn't make any sense whatsoever because our warmth is not going to be loaded up against Africa and Europe. Our warmth in the equator in the Pacific is not going to be there. We were basically under a strong, if not a super El Nino for 2023. It just doesn't make sense. It does not make sense thermodynamically, because if I switch over to our SST anomaly and I'll draw a circle right there where that supposed or that pseudo recurvature look is, my internet is running very slow because of all the bad weather out there. It's coming down again. There you go. Bam. Superimpose it. You can see that the model is showing precip anomalies where our warmest temperatures could possibly be located across the central subtropical Atlantic. So I think we should not be lulled into a false sense of security. I really don't think we should. We should not. And in fact, if you look here, even just on this overlay, if you look off the coast of Mexico there, we have cooler anomalies. If you look off the coast of Central America and South America, we have those cooler anomalies, which would suggest that the Eastern Pacific might not have a bunch of nudging or oomph to develop a multitude of tropical cyclones during their later hurricane season, which would allow the Atlantic to kind of cook a little bit. It could do its thing, and this is for the month of August. We're probably going to have to wrap this live stream up because honestly, I can't get this squared away. We have such bad weather right overhead. Yeah, special weather stated system right over top of us. So honestly, it's been 25 minutes. I'm probably going to kill the live stream here in about 5 because YouTube is struggling. And then we'll save another discussion for the end of this week once we get more data in. We should have our latest Euro information by Friday, if not Saturday. Let me look at the calendar. Comes out on the 5th, so Saturday. We'll probably do another live stream on Saturday to talk the latest European data. But yes, silver steel, I completely agree, could be a below-average season. It's interesting that the Euro, the last time we looked at it, was showing a potentially above-average season for them. And I think that has a lot to do with the Euro trending further towards an El Nino configuration in the Pacific. And I think as we trend away from that, in March, we had that big update to where now we kept it in a neutral, if not warm neutral. Now we could possibly see an extension of that. We'll have to see what happens when we get this latest update. Oh, as a matter of fact, yes, Storm Coder, fantastic. We're going to be getting busy this month. As a matter of fact, you're correct. CSU is going to be releasing their update on Thursday, so we will be doing a live stream again on Thursday. Then we'll do another live stream on Saturday. Then we'll do another live stream early next week, and this is going to be a busy month because then shortly after that, we've got the Hurricane Conference, and I will be streaming and working hard through that. So from here on out, we're going to just be building momentum, building and building and building momentum. It's good to have everybody tuning in tonight as well. We have over 100 viewers in right now currently, and we're going to keep going with the brief before I tune everybody out, or before I have everybody tune out. So now, real quick, before I start to take a couple of questions, and I circle back to a few overlays, if you watch the CFS has been doing something very interesting the last couple of days. I'm going to fast forward all the way to the end, and the CFS right down the... Oh, no. What just happened? Are we still here? Can anybody hear me? What just happened? Oh, my gosh, we are lagging big time. We're going to have to call this... Yeah, guys, we're going to have to probably call this, unfortunately. This is brutal. Are we back? Are we so back? So no, not necessarily, Roxanne. The hotspots did not change. I really don't. I'm still stuck in my ways for hotspots. But yeah, we're going to call this live stream in about 2 minutes. After we hit 30 minutes, I'm going to end it. This has been a very poor live stream. Definitely going to stream again on the 3rd. And we'll talk the CSU forecast, because I'm very interested to see what the CSU forecast is. And I'm super excited after they release their forecast to sit down with Dr. Phil again once we get into the hurricane conference. Mr. Shane Castle, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It's great to see you in there, sir. I miss you guys over at the OWS. I hope all has been well. The hurricane conference is going to be out in New Orleans. I'm excited. So truthfully, Unknown Guy 245, if I had to put any bets on what this season could look more like, I would say 2004. I would say 2004. Simply because of the fact that 2005 we had warmth focused through the tropics, cooler anomalies in the subtropics, and we had a kick-in cool neutral to a weak La Nina across the Pacific. A lot of cold water almost everywhere in the Pacific. So if anything, I would say 2004 is likely to be a greater configuration, especially if the CanSIPS were to verify. You look at this here, we have the warmth in the Central Pacific, cooler anomalies teleconnected off the Central America coast, southwest corner of the United States, and then we have our warmer subtropics, warmer Canary Current out across the Atlantic. Same general configuration for the rest of the globe. All right. So yeah, we're going to kill the live stream. I think I accidentally lagged out as I was outroing myself, and now everybody's gone. What a mess. I'm sorry. Houston could definitely see a early or late season landfall, in my opinion. I'm not quite sure we're going to see long trackers like Beryl last year go all the way through. And we're done again. We just lagged out again. All right, folks. I hate to do this to you. We'll see you again on Thursday once CSU does their update. I'll probably stream on TikTok or Instagram if you have those social media apps. We will go ahead and do a update on there, and I'll live stream coverage of CSU releasing their forecast at the Tropical Weather Conference, and then we'll do an actual in-house stream pending the weather here in Central Florida can get its act together. But yeah, I feel bad. This has been a very brutal live stream. Eastern Louisiana, I do think, is still a hot spot that we'll have to watch. Closer to Baton Rouge, New Orleans. The Eastern and Central Gulf, I really do think, is where we're going to have to watch. So the west coast of Florida to the extreme eastern tip of the boot of of Louisiana. Hopefully, Sarasota will. But truthfully, I'm not thinking they're going to have rain anytime soon, because we've had a very dominant west coast sea breeze. The west coast sea breeze flies into Central Florida and barely has time to interact with the east coast sea breeze. And I think a lot of it has to do with our cooler shelf waters off our west coast moving through the peninsula, and then we have the warmer Gulf Stream waters off the east coast not creating as much of that push inland. So we're not quite there yet to where we're going to get thunderstorms firing up everywhere, but we will get there soon. The Carolinas, I also do think, are going to be a hot spot, and that's something else we can cover once CSU releases their forecast. But folks, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It has been a mess dealing with bad weather. I hope that everything is okay in your neck of the woods, whether you are a Central Floridian or you are preparing for the severe weather risk out there in the Great Plains, the Ohio, Mississippi valleys, the lower Midwestern states. But yes, we're going to cover all this. I'm going to remember all of your questions. I'll make a little note here at my desk so then we can talk more about this as we get into Thursday and then our Saturday stream. Very excited for both streams. I think Thursday and Saturday are really going to start to paint the picture of what is ahead. Puerto Rico, I do think we're going to have to watch very closely. I'm nervous for Puerto Rico this hurricane season, especially since a lot of folks have been throwing 2017 around as an analog. That was the year of Irma and Maria, so I'm going to be watching Puerto Rico with both eyes throughout the hurricane season, even before the hurricane season starts. Of course it is. But regardless, we're past the 30-minute mark. I'm going to close out. We'll revisit some of this information as well as the CSU forecast on Thursday. And then on Saturday, we'll bundle it all up together, and we'll also talk what the European seasonal model has for us as well. So have a wonderful rest of your evening, folks. Windward Islands, yes, you're going to have to watch as well. But again, keep your questions, hold your questions, and we'll answer them once again on Thursday and Saturday. I promise I'll get back to you. I will. Or just drop them in the comment section down below upon the conclusion of this live stream, and I'll get right back to you. We're lagging again. So with that being said, folks, watch out for the notification, and click subscribe if you're brand new to the channel, despite the latency issues we've been facing tonight. And I don't know if y'all can still hear me because we're frozen again, but until next time, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.